All right,
Thank you.
cool. And let me just make sure that I have the ability. I need the ability to share screen, please.
Yes. Okay.
All right, cool. People are making reference to my background. I am the new Ken. This Ken is a graphic designer. All right, hold on one second. I'm also going to swap out I'm going to choose different headphones. All right, everybody. How are y'all doing today? My name is Miggi. I'm a designer advocate at Figma for education. Let me make sure that I can hear y'all. Felicia, could you say something real quick, please? Just want to
Hello,
make sure
hello,
that. All
hello.
right, perfect. All right, cool. And then let me check to see I have share screen. I have share screen and brilliant. Let me close this out. So today I'm going to be talking about prototyping with you all. Just a little background on me if you don't know who I am. I thought I had intro slides. I do have an intro slide. I'm just going to move this over here. So I'm a designer advocate for education at Figma. I could be found on Twitter as at Miggy. I have been both a designer. Well, I've been a designer, illustrator, photographer, coder. I started off as a web developer early on. Um, I've taught design probably since about like 2005 at a university, Rochester Institute of Technology. I've now been at Figma for about 2.5 years. Um, just helping, students and educators get ramped up and like the best ways to use Figma. Um, I do want to emphasize that Figma and FigJam are free for students and educators. So if you don't have the free plan, if you go to figma.com/education, you can verify your account. And then that way it'll give you the ability to create education teams. So just about signing up for Figma with your student account isn't enough. If you verify EDU status and you can create an education team, on the education team, you could do things like voice chat and use video and there's a lot of pro tools and limits that are not had on the education team that you might encounter with like a free starter team. So you might have your drafts, but then you create an education team. You can move the files to your education team, and you won't have those like limits or blockers. I heard that y'all got like a bit of an intro in Figma, but I'm gonna cover just a couple quick things. For those of you that are still relatively new to Figma, you're still ramping up, finding your way around the interface. One of my favorite keyboard shortcuts is Command/. And what that does is give you the ability to search for any feature, basically, or not search for a feature, but actuate a feature. So if I was to go up here and type in the word keyboard shortcuts, let's say I want to learn all the keyboard shortcuts that I have available to me, you press Command/. Or if you have a keyboard with a different language, you can hit Command P or Control P if you're on Windows. And then just type in keyboard shortcuts and you'll get this lovely bar across the bottom that'll allow you to see all the different shortcuts. Couple of those slides. I'll say that again. The way that this file is structured, right? We have the intro. Here, there's just a few assets. This is going to be some of the assets that we're going to use in like kind of constructing things. So these are components. So I know that y'all have been working with like wireframes and thinking about that. So think of these components as like kind of like reusable assets that you may be putting together with things. So I can like scale this up and down. I can add in some text. And if you want, I could even kind of give you some insights as to how those are created, but I can also share some links as well. So the if you're looking to get into like auto layout, variants, or component properties, all three of these are kind of like associated with how these elements are built. What a component is like a reusable element. So when you have things that you're going to be having in your prototypes that are recurring, so if you have a button, if you have an arrow, if you have an icon, what you want to do is you want to like create them and encapsulate them, so then this way it's much easier to update. So if you were to look at this card component that I have here, you'll see these icons. So those are making reference to these. If I was to make an adjustment in this icon, like let's say if I go down like that, and if I outright butcher it, you'll see that it updates across these other elements. So fundamentally, that's what components do. And since we're going to be focusing a little bit more on prototyping, I just kind of have some of these elements here to kind of show you how these components may be used, but I can also dig into those as well. So I'm going to click on a little example here in this next page. Things are just kind of all over the place. There we go. So I'm going to click on this example. I'm just going to show you a quick example of what can be done with prototyping in Figma. And then we're going to start from scratch, bare bones, open it up the floor for like questions as we kind of break down how this is made. So the first thing I'm going to show you is that what this is a very simple story prototype. When I build prototypes, I don't try to build a fully robust, like fully featured, like you can do anything with it. I target very specific user stories, and I try to, make smaller prototypes that can kind of tell these smaller stories. So this is an example of one of them. I'm going to click up here, go to the prototype mode. You can also just press Shift E. Shift E will swap me between design and prototype mode. When you're working on your prototypes and you're going to go back and forth between design and prototype mode, Shift E is going to help you do that. So when I do this, right, I'm able to be, kind of like in this file, I can see this prototype and I kind of changed up some things here. What I'm going to do really quick before we kind of get going with this is I'm going to go to my prototype settings. I'm going to set this as the iPhone 14 device. I'm going to set a little background color for it. And I'm going to come over here. You see how there's this little tag flow one. I'm going to drag this flow one here. We're going to talk about what that means. I just want to play this and then we're going to kind of break this down into a much simpler approach. So basically, this is that prototype. I can scroll this content up and down. So Command D, duplicate. And so now I have my start frame and I'm going to have my end frame. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a relationship between these two frames when prototyping. So I'm going to create this kind of like an abstract symbol so you can kind of see. I'm just going to draw like, like a little rectangle. I'm going to put it across the screen. Let's say that this is your abstract button. Okay. Now, things that matter when you're prototyping is how you're grouping things, how you're naming things. So here it says rectangle 8. I'm just going to say, proceed button, right? Because this is kind of like that wireframe, right? This is just like a representation of it. And I want a copy of it in my end frame. So I can select the frame and I can paste it. And let's just have it, this can kind of end. I'm going to make this like big, right? Over here to the right. So it's the same object. We're just going from one to the other one. Let's make it a different color. Let's just say blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a relationship between these two objects. I'm going to come over here to my prototype panel. Once again, the prototype panel, press Shift E and you're in that prototype panel. Press Shift E again and you're in the design panel. So Shift E, prototype. So when I'm in prototype panel, I can now create a relationship between these two frames. You'll see that when I select this rectangle, I no longer see its like height, its width, but instead I see this little plus that allows me to drag out what we refer to as noodles. That's the official term. So I'm able to drag out this noodle and it'll create some interaction details that's going to happen between those two frames. Now, if you watch my screen, let's bring this up a little bit, make my window a little bit smaller. If you watch my screen, the interaction details has a few things that you need to pay attention to. So first off, you have the interaction. You have like a tap, a scroll, mouse over, mouse down. So what is the event that the user is performing to trigger the event? And here's the behavior. So what do you want to happen? So are you going to navigate to another frame? Are you going to scroll something? Then you're going to choose the target of the destination. So we're going to navigate to another frame. Here, this will preview if there's any animation. And then you choose the transition. And then you can choose how that transition happens. So here I have this noodle. When I click on the noodle, right, I get the details for that transition. So right now it's charged up with an on tap. So it recognizing that I chose a phone device, right? So instead of on click, it's going to say on tap. So Figma will recognize whether or not you're on like a mobile device or like a desktop device, and may choose between tap and click. I'm going to navigate to, and I'm going to navigate to this frame name. So you'll see all of these other frames that are here. So making sure that you name them effectively can be important. And then it's going to say animation. How is this going to transition? When it's instant, it'll just happen right away, right? So there is no transition. It goes from frame one to the next frame. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to go right here. This is my flow that has been created. A flow is what I mentioned earlier, this kind of like bite-sized prototype. It's only a section of a prototype. You create multiple flows. Oftentimes you're relating these to like a user story. So I'm just going to name this, Miggi, clicks button, right? And so now I'm going to hit play. And what that's going to do, it's going to take me over into another window, and I can actually see everybody else's flows here. If I click on that, right, it just goes to the blue thing. I can press R to restart, and I can just look at my very sad prototype, but it does a thing. So if I click on the flow two, right, I can see flow two. Look, man, you did it. There you go. Emma, how are we doing over here? Emma, boom, it works. Flow four, boom, it works. It's wrong size, but it works. Aylin, boom, it works. So I can see that y'all understood the assignment because all of your flows are lined up there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on that interaction, and we're going to make that interaction a little bit more exciting. This time, I'm going to choose an animation to help us understand what is transpiring when we click on that. So here, you'll notice there's a number of different transitions that we have. So dissolve will just crossfade the two frames. Move in, move out, push, slide in, and slide out. Those are going to be great when you're transitioning like one frame to like something new entirely. Like if you have a menu, or if you have like a whole nother frame with nothing that relates to that first one, then that's great. So let's see what a move in looks like, right? So you'll see when I hover, the next frame is going to move in on top of that first frame. And what we're also going to do is when we click on this object here and we go back, we're going to have the same thing. So on tap, we're going to go back to the start. We're going to have it, animate out. Instead of move in, we're going to say move out, and we're going to have it go back to its original position. So right now we're just gonna use the baseline ease. I'm gonna show y'all. Actually, let's use my favorite ease. I'm gonna choose an ease in out, but I'm gonna make it custom. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move these little handles here and there. And my favorite ease in out. This should be the default. I don't know why it's not the default, but it should be let's see, 2.2 and 1. So these are my favorite values. I'm going to share that here. 0.8, comma 0, 0.2, comma 1. And basically what it is, it's the position of these two dots. So this first dot is 0.8, so it's 80% and 0. And the second dot is 20% and 1. So these four numbers just represent the position of these two dots. And this gives us an ease in out. So this is that advanced part of the tutorial if you're unfamiliar. This is my favorite type of ease. Typically, I'd say about 90% of the eases in UI design is going to be some degree of ease in out. And what that means is an object starts from a resting position, it gains speed, and then it slows down and stops, right? So there we go. And what I'm going to do too is I can actually select both of those arrows, and I can choose the custom Bezier and type in my values. There we go. So now, because I selected both of those arrows, now they both have that same thing. So I'm going to hit play. We're going to go over to our prototyping window. When I click, there we go. You see it comes in from the left and it goes away, right? So it's moving in, it's performing this transition. This whole new window is moving in and moving out. All right. Any questions? Any questions? By the way, you could chat in here. You could just hit / and be like, hello. So hit the / key, or you could right click and say cursor chat, and you could say, what's up? So cursor chat in Figma. Okay. So next, let's try a different type of transition. So I'm going to select both of those frames. And instead of having that transition come in, here I'm going to change this to Smart Animate. And what Smart Animate is going to do is it's going to look at the first frame and it's going to look at the second frame. It's going to see the layer names in order, and it's going to look at both of them and see that, okay, we have the proceed button here and the proceed button here. Here it's gray, here it's blue, and it's looking at its properties and it says, oh, okay, so from here to here, it gets larger and it becomes blue. So now it will smart animate that. Boop, there it is. And then now it'll go back and forth. So smart animate will only work if you have the same object across multiple frames that has the same name and like the same layer order. So if I was to add another object here, right, I can put this here. I can give it. I love Smart Animate too. It's like my favorite thing. Like I have so many fun examples. Actually, here, let me see. I'll pull up some additional Smart Animate examples that I've had. Let me see. Published. I believe it's right here. I can actually share these in. So here's my Smart Animate examples. Oh, I thought I had more. Well, here, I'll copy these and I'll bring them into this file and I'll drop them in here. Oops. I'll drop them into a new page. I'll say Smart Animate examples and I'll paste them in. So now each one of them already has their prototype. Look at how easy it was for me to just paste those prototypes. I can click play. And so here I click that and it animates out. So these are just a bunch of circles made to look like 3D. I got the bar loader animation. That's fun. Got the pack person and like little loading animations. So yeah, there's a lot you can do with that. So feel free, you can dig into these examples and see how that works. But basically, it works because this layer exists across these frames, and you'll notice that might be a little hard to see. Let's see on this one. When I select this object, if I see it highlighted across the subsequential frames, you see how it's highlighted across all of them. If I click that second dot, it's telling you that it recognizes this object as it's being animated across all these frames. So it knows that it will perform smart animate correctly. It won't smart animate correctly if things aren't named properly. So let's see here. Who else is in the prototype mode right now? I can follow along somebody else and I could see where they're at. If I'm following Emma, if you're there, click on something, click on the globe. If you're like in this prototype right now, or
One
let's see.
sec. Sorry, I wasn't
Oh, no
there.
worries. Oh, no worries. No worries. No worries. All right. So Emma, I'm following you. So if you're in the prototype, all right, let me see. I'll follow somebody else if they get there. David, are you in here? Hi.
Is it working?
Here, let me hit refresh. Let me see. All right, so I'm in here and I'm following. Who just said, is it working? Is that David?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, cool. So if I'm following you, there you go. I should be able to see you interact with this. No?
I think I'm on the wrong screen.
Oh, yeah, go into the click on the prototyping screen. Like click in and press play. All right, let's see. Kai in here. Kai's in here twice. Emma's in here several times. There it is. Okay, cool. So I'm following Kai. And notice here's my cursor. Kai, click it again. There you go. So when you have multiple people in prototyping mode, you can actually watch them interact with the prototype. So I could see Kai's cursor move around. I could see Kai click on the things. So this is one way that we actually do user testing. We will share a prototype and can actually watch the other person use the prototype. So now Kai is on the pack person and I could see their cursor. So this is just one thing that I wanted to point out. Not that many people are aware of this feature, even though it's kind of like a killer feature. So whenever we at Figma are doing prototypes and we share them out with folks, we share that link and watch them interact with it. All right, cool. So I'm going to go back to the basics page. Are there any questions on like this kind of like very rudimentary approach to prototyping? So if I was to add like another, like element in this page, like let's say this like little circle, I need to be in design mode. Let's make that, white. So this prototype now, when I play this prototype, right, it's going to animate both of those things concurrently. So Smart Animate will animate certain properties like size, position, scale. It won't animate things like vector, vector shapes. It won't actually animate that. Whenever it comes across something that it can't animate well, I can even rotate this. That'll work. It'll just crossfade. So it'll crossfade when it encounters properties that it can't quite handle. All right, cool. So next, I'm going to talk about transitions.
Sorry, I had a quick question. Could you
Oh,
show
sure.
like where to find this? Oh, wait, I see the smart animate thing. Never mind. I like didn't see where you first pointed it out at first, and I was a little bit confused, but I think
Oh,
I see
okay.
it. Yeah, never
Yeah,
mind.
of course. Yeah, when you select the noodle, Smart Animate will be right here. So it's one of the transitions that pops up.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Feel free to ask questions, y'all. Like we're a small group. So I can bend this demo however you want me to bend it. So here, when I wanted to demonstrate how that transition can work, like let's say if I do have a card, right? This card is set up with Smart Animate. So the card kind of like reacts and grows with content. And because it's like its own grouped unit, when I paste it across frames, let's say if I was to grow this, right? And I create a simple prototype where, I click on this and it's going to go here. It's going to perform that animation as Smart Animate. It's going to do let's do our custom Bezier, say 0.8, comma, do I still have it in paste? Nope. 0.8, comma, 0, comma, 0.2, comma, 1, right? That's a nice S-curve. Sometimes too, you can make it like this, right? Sometimes you can exaggerate the ease out, and sometimes you can exaggerate the ease in. And what that means is an ease in is better when something is starting from a stopped position. And an ease out is better when something has like been going really fast and it's going to slow all the way down. So this is like slow beginning, like it's starting from a stop position and gaining speed. And this is like, oh, okay, like it hit a top speed and this is slowing down. So typically most of your easing transitions will be some degree of ease in out. So let's do this. And usually I like to take record of my numbers and just kind of reuse those. Those numbers can be used with CSS to perform transitions with like CSS animation. So here, right, this card, let me make sure I have it animate back with the same tap. I like making very small experiments first, right? So as I mentioned, I like making small experiments to see how, something might work. And then I begin to apply it to like a bigger prototype. So, if I'm working out like this like little card, and how this might animate, right? I might test this out first and see how it works. And what's cool about this is like if you notice this is moving, all of these elements, they're actually moving down, but we're only animating one element for that card. And that's what's going to come with like the power of making a component or grouping elements together. Cool. Any questions? So let's say if I make a component and I have like, let's say I have several of these, you know, and they're going to be, let's make sure you're in design mode, you know, and then they're going to be, let me change those images too. So if I want a different image for each one, I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to place some new images. So you can go file, place images, or we could use our new favorite keyboard shortcut and say place image. And then here, I can go in, I have my documents. I have an assets folder full of animals, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can place these animals here. So 1, 2, 3, oops, 3. And let me get that squirrel. 4, right? So if I need to crop this, I can click on that and go down here to crop and change that image. Okay, so now I have these. I can align them, I can tidy them up, can make them smaller there. And now these 4 objects, when I click, I can put them in that next point and I can extend them all out. And want to make sure that they're in this. You'll notice that this frame, they're sticking out of the frame because this frame is not set to clip content. So I'm going to clip it. And we're going to bring these. If you ever want to select all of the objects inside of a frame, select that frame, just press enter and it selects everything inside of it. And I'm going to move this down. And now this frame that we've entered, so we're going to tap on, you know, something here and it's going to extend them all out. And then we want to be able to scroll this frame. So I'm going to select this frame. I'm going to go to prototype and it says scroll behavior. And we're going to set that to vertical scrolling, right? Vertical scrolling. So now what I can do is I'm actually just going to here click on the whole frame, right? I'm clicking on the whole frame. On click, we're going to navigate to this frame. We're going to smart animate and we're going to do that custom transition. And what's going to be cool is that this frame now has scrolling. So what we're going to see is we're going to click on the frame. They're going to extend out and now we can scroll up and down. And we can also then click on that frame and go back by dragging that noodle. So there you go. I can scroll and then boop, and they go back. Any questions? So once again, to see the content of that frame, go to the design panel, turn off clip content, and you'll see that they're all there. The way that you know those elements are in fact inside of that frame, you click on the frame and you look here and you'll see that each one of those components are located in there. Do you all know how to create components? Would you like to learn how to create components? Feel free to let me know in cursor chat too. Say yes or slay, girl, slay. All right, yes, please. All right, cool. So when you're working on your wireframes, you're thinking about like the grouping of objects such as like cards and buttons, and you want to think of like any element that gets like repeated, you know, as being a component. it's good to work the way that you are and like wireframing out ideas first and then beginning to build those into things that you may reuse. So like anything that you have again and again, you want to make into a component. So here, this is like my little component area where I have these available. Oftentimes too, these can be published and made available in other files. So you can publish a library, right? And then when you go to that like asset folder, you can kind of see like where they are. And once you have them, you can just kind of drag them in to your folder. And I'm going to show you how to make those. So if you want to join me back in that assets page, I'm going to make a very simple card component. So, or like, let's make, let me think, I could make like a navigation component first. So here, I will call this, I will start with a bit of text. I'm going to press T for text, and I'm going to say, you know, menu item or menu navigation. I'm going to make that text a little bit bigger. Let's say 16. Oops. 16 point. Want to make sure it's selected and type in 16. All right, and we're gonna make this into like a kind of like a long button with a little arrow at the end, right? I'm gonna press Shift A. What Shift A does is it makes it into an auto layout frame. So the text is inside of this new frame here. And this new frame grows and shrinks with the size of the text. So this text is inside the frame. So I'm going to call this my menu button. I'm going to say MIG menu button just because we're all in this file, right? So this frame, you'll see how it wraps around that text. I'm going to come over here and give it a fill, and we can also give it a stroke, right? So there's a stroke around it, and as I type in text, it grows. So this being an auto layout frame, there's a few things you need to pay attention to. Up here, you'll see how the frame behaves, how it resizes. So there's horizontal resizing, and right now that is set to hug. So when I hover over this, if you look at the UI, right, there's little red arrows that point in that direction that lets me know that this frame is hugging anything that's inside. So as I go smaller, if I just say, hey, right, it's hugging it and making it smaller. If I hit return, I'm able to make it taller because it's hugging it and fitting itself to that text. There's 3 different types of modes. There's hug, there's fill, and there's fixed. When it's fixed, you determine the width and the height. When it's set to fill, it's looking to see if there's anything above it. What is its parent container to kind of fill that space? So I'm going to leave this as hug. I'm going to call this menu nav item. And one other thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a little icon to go with it. I'm going to draw an arrow. So I'm going to press the P key, that's the pen tool, and I could draw a little arrow, hit escape, and draw a little arrow. And I can make that a little bit thicker. So here I now have a little graphic that can be exported as an SVG and used as an icon. Let's make that round. And what I can do with this too, this can also be a component because I might want to use this in multiple places. So here, I'm going to draw a frame around this. Let's say that this is a common size. So actually our text is pretty small. So let's just say 16 by 16. We actually need to make it hella small, y'all. So I'm going to bring this up. Let's reduce the stroke on it. So maybe 2 and make it a little smaller. Okay, and if you want to get really nerdy about it, you can open up the layout grid. You could put in, you know, just a better grid to set exactly where that arrow goes. Give yourself some padding. And let's make this a component. So up here, create component. we're going to say icon slash arrow. That little slash will put it inside of like a grouping. So if you have other icons, you would also have it that way. Can hide that grid. And now I can take an instance of this icon. I'm going to just duplicate it, hit Command D, right? You get a copy of it, and I could drop it in here. And you'll see that once that arrow gets thrown into that auto layout frame, it's now going to grow everything. They're all going to grow together. So I'm going to do one more thing with this. This bit of text, I'm going to show you all a new feature. We can set the text details for this text as vertical trim. And what that does is it's going to trim like the top and the bottom of this to make it a little bit less. And here we want to set our auto layout to align left in the center. Because when you have auto layout, you can choose how the elements inside are set. So we did a bunch of stuff there. I'll cover it all one more time. So menu item, right? Press Shift A, give it a fill color. Let's give it a stroke. Here we can change the padding around it. It has 8 pixel padding all the way around. We could set that to 12 and 12, right? So that padding that's being applied around that. And then we took this icon and dropped it in there. We select that frame and then tell it to be laid out across the sensor in that middle. Right? And we give it a name. So like, MIG menu button 2. So what we can do with this now is I can select this. I can come up here and make this a component, right? And now that it's a component, you'll see it over here in the assets panel. There it is. There's my menu nav item, and I could drop in a bunch of these. And what's fun with these is that you can put whatever you want in there. So you can say like, hello, I am a button, right? And if I make any changes to this first one, right? So if I make any changes to this, let's say I change, the font to be bold, this will follow suit. If, I come up here and I round out those corners, right? The instances will also follow that same behavior. However, in the instance, you can override certain properties. So I can make this a little bit wider. Let's say this is 12 and this is 12. Let's say I want to change that color to like red. Let's say even here, I want to lose that background color, right? So this instance has a bunch of overrides. And what I can do is I can come over here and I can reset all those changes and it'll go back to its original state. If you're working on a component, let's say this is the main component, but then you made an instance better and you want to push that back to the main one, I can right click and say main component, push changes to main component, and then now the main one will behave that way. So this becomes helpful when you're like creating, like multiple like navigation elements. And then here I can change the behavior of it, right? The second that I make this wider, I change that from hugged to fixed. And let's say those elements inside, I could press enter, or I can select these, sorry. I can come over here to this auto layout and I can select this alignment window and I could press X and it'll change that behavior of how they're aligned. So they're spaced between. So if I change that, press X again, they're not spaced between. If I press X, they're spaced between. And all that is basically typing in the word auto here, and it'll auto space between those, allowing us to have these fun buttons. And then you could say, home, about me, what is it? Portfolio, and I don't know, resume, right? You can make these navigation items. Any questions? Questions? Is this helpful? I just kind of blacked out and just did a bunch of stuff on components. I don't even know where I am anymore. Okay, cool. All right. Yes, this is so slay. All right. Appreciate you. That's what I like to hear. So I can select these two and I can increase that padding on all of them. So we got like 12 padding on them all, and I can expand these out. So another fun thing with these is I can select them all, press Shift A, and now they are in an auto layout frame themselves. So I can name this navigation. And with this auto layout, right now they're all going down, but I can choose a horizontal layout and then they're going across or down or across. I could change the spacing between them. I could even overlap them. And even in this like way, I can come over here and I can change some other values. So this canvas stacking, I could say first on top, excuse me, and it puts the first one on top, last on top, first on top. And then I can extend the spacing. So when we're talking about making like a card, right? So this card, and I press Shift O, outline mode, is made of an auto layout. So there's rows. So there's a row that has the username, the icon, and another icon, right? There's like some space between. Then there's a shape that represents an image, right? Then here's another little set. There's 3 elements that are on the right, on the left, and on the right. And then there's the text. So that's how something like this is created. You have these individual pieces, such as like, like the author and like the little card, right? And they come together. So if I was to construct something like this that would then be prototyped, right? I would say, let's just do title. Let's do a little circle, right? And let's do like a little icon. Typically, you want to make sure that everything is sized accordingly. You're like working on a bit of a grid here. So if I was to draw a little rectangle that's, let's say, 24 by 24, let's round out the corners, right? This might be the little like avatar photo that I'm using. Let's say username, right? And then let's have like the icon with the 4 dots. I think I already have one over here. Yeah, we have an icon with 4 dots. So I'm just going to copy it and I'm going to move it over here. So this is going to be our first row. I'm going to select all 3 of them. I'm going to press Shift A. So that puts them into an auto layout frame. These 2 over here, they're going to be kind of like stacked to the left, and this is going to extend all the way out. So we want this element to extend in both directions. So instead of hug, this is going to be fill container, right? Oops, let me make sure I get the right one. So this should be fill container. And let's change that spacing down to a value of 8. So when I press Shift A, Shift O, you can see there's a spacing of 8 between these, right? There's a spacing of 8. Between those elements, and this is set to fill. So however wide this goes, right, this element's over here on the right, and these 2 elements are over here on the left, and I can even apply like a white fill for there. So this could be our top bar, right? I could make that into a component. And then what's cool about this is whenever we have instances, right, I could take a photo of myself and drop it right there. I can crop it. Wow. Okay. And then I could put in, Miggi from Figgy, right? And in even this, I can choose, like I can say, you saw when I pressed return, right? There's like extra space there. I can say, no, I want this to be a fixed size, right? And even here, if I hold on the option key and click, I can choose it to be truncated as text. So now if I write in more text, it actually just leaves like ellipses. So that allows me to like make that in a meaningful way. If we want any padding on the outside of this, I can come over here and apply a bit of padding. So I could say 8 pixel padding, 8 pixel padding, right? Or like, let's say top and bottom is only maybe 4. There we go. So now we can see that this is our first bit of the component. And let's just add another image. So I'm going to draw in a rectangle. Let's do Shift A, right? We put it inside of another frame. Let's give that a fill. And here, same thing. Let's make this a component, right? And this is going to be a reusable component. This could be our media component. And so now that we have a media component, right, we can now put it here. And you see what I did. As soon as I move that up, it's like, whoa, that's not working. This should instead of fixed, be fill container, because we want it to extend, right? So now when I extend this, there we go. So now we have another little bit. It's got the 8 pixel padding. And what we can do is we can now bring these two together. So let's add one more little bit here. Let's add in like a block of text. I'm going to just grab this block of text. So let's say I have this text that I want to be, part of this. Let's make the text a little smaller because of the size of the card. Or you know what? No, it should be wider. This should be wider. This should be wider. And this text too should also be in its own auto layout frame. Let's press Shift A, right? Put it fill. Let's add in a bit more padding on the bottom. So we can click here and say like maybe 24 bottom padding. And this text itself, it should fill container. So this frame is going to be our text component. And all three of these, they should be card / user, this would be card / media, and then this can be card / text. And a lot of people, what they like to do for their media components is set the fill to an image, and then it displays like this, and that's kind of like a cue to other people to add an image there. So here we could take a copy of that and put this here. I could extend this, right? There we go. So now we have these 3 pieces that when I press Shift A, they're now brought together as their own card. So I can adjust the spacing between them, which probably leave it at 0 or maybe move up to like, let's say 8 or say 4. There we go. So we got some spacing between those and give that a background fill of white, and we could round out those corners a little bit, clip the content, and set a stroke value of like gray and put it on the outside. So now we have a little card, and this card, the width is set to hug and the vertical is set to hug, but maybe the width is set to fixed and the up and down is set to hug. So as I add in more text, it will grow to fill that. If I want to give it padding, I can command click there and just say like 24. Oops, that's too much. Say 12. Oops, 12 padding. Yeah, same thing. These elements inside, we could set them to fill container, and now it will grow and shrink. And I could take this text, make it a little bit smaller, right? So now if I want to make this its own component, let's add in some padding there too. I made a new component, and this is the card. So now the card can be whatever we want. I can place new imagery here. Boom, new image. And if I want to update it in the, let's say here, make sure this is also set to fill. There we go. If I want to extend this, right, this will now also grow. And this text can be modified. So then you can have as many cards as you want. And this is going to be much easier to prototype with. Cool. Questions? Feel like this was a lot. I covered a lot, but hopefully it was clear. But yeah, all 3 of these elements using those auto layout features will now give you the ability to use this better. I'm gonna leave you two with Figma.com or YouTube. I made a video covering a lot of this auto layout stuff with the cards. That should help you out. Let's put the video right in here for you. No, let me delete that. Paste. No, it should be a card. Hold on. YouTube is weird sometimes. Copy that. And no. YouTube's supposed to like unfurl in here. I don't know why it's not doing that. Of course, because I'm doing a live demo. Let me try one more time. You can do it. Nope. Okay. You're being a jerk. Anyways, here we go. I could drop this in. Check that out. That right there is a full 1 hour tutorial on using auto layout and making this type of content. So how are we doing on time? Was this an hour and a half or is this an hour? Oh, I believe my time is up. I will kind of close out on last thing really quick. Interactive components are kind of great, and it allows you to nest an interaction that you can reuse. So this right here is a little like icon interaction. So if I copy this and put this onto the frame, let's put in a whole bunch of these, right? And then I'll explain how to do it really quick. If I hit play on that frame, basically, you know, I can click on these and then they're kind of like, we no longer need to rely on the frames to be the, you know, kind of defining aspect of the interaction. So I'll just show you how to quickly make one of those. Let's make a little scribble, right? So I'm going to use the pencil tool. Let's create a couple frames. So frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4. I'm going to draw a little scribble. So scribble, 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 scribble. I'm going to select all 4 of these frames. I'm going to come up here. Let's prototype them really quick, actually. So here I'm going to select this frame and let's go to that frame and let's go to that frame and let's go back to the original frame. And I'm going to select all of these arrows and we're going to have them be instant. So we're going to say after delay of, you know, let's say about 200 milliseconds. Oops, 200 milliseconds. Each one's going to navigate to the next one. And I'm going to select this whole thing. So if I hit play, let's see what that looks like. So we got that like little animation, right? It's like one to the next one. I can select them all and now make it a component set. So as a component set, now I can drop this into a frame. I can copy that one. I can copy that one. I can copy that one. And it basically will start the animation at whatever frame I just added to here. Oops, undo. Make sure you're in design mode when you're pasting these. And so now when I click on this frame and I hit play, the interactive components will just play through independently on their own. So check out interactive components. There's a whole playground file, interactive components, playground file. This will show much more usable examples or relevant examples, such as making like little switches and check boxes. So I will leave a link to that. Yeah, this one unfurls. There we go. So then this way you can follow up and learn the concept with a little bit more detail, interactive components. There you go. So yeah, the way that this one works, this is a freebie if you want to use it. I'm going to drop this into a frame. So the way that this works, I could throw in 3 photos. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. I clip this, right? And now I have this reusable interactive component that allows me to make a new gallery, right? So now I got a new gallery. So I could basically take that. Let's say I want to throw in another gallery, right? I duplicate that and I move this here. I unclip it, throw in 3 new images. 1, 2, 3. And this is the power of interactive components. I can clip it. And when I hit this play, hit frame. Let me zoom out. And now I got a whole new gallery, both on the same page. So you can deconstruct that, see how that works. Basically using a drag interaction to go from one frame to the next. So even here, when I click on this, you see first, second, or third. And it's using that interactive component approach. Cool. Any questions? Feel free to reach me on twitter.com/@Miggi. I'm always down to answer questions. So if you're working on a project, you're stumped, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help out.
Thank you so much for hosting the workshop. Sorry, Felicia's Wi-Fi has been acting up, so they weren't able to stay for the duration of the workshop.
Okay. But yeah, feel free, if you want a copy of this file, go right up here and just say duplicate. You'll have your own copy. Like I said, reach out if you have any other questions. Hopefully you found this helpful. And I do have additional little follow-up videos here that you can follow along with that are will help you along your journey.
Thank you so much. This was so cool and helpful.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, last thing too. Check out YouTube/Figma Design. Go to videos, prototyping 101. There's another whole video there that can help you out, and animation basics. So both of these are workshops that I performed previously that I've covered that could help you just, put this stuff together. All right, I gotta head out. I actually got another meeting, running a little late, but thank you all for being, great and hanging in there. And I wish you the best on your prototypes.
Thank you so much again.
All right, take care. Have a good one.